What up, everybody? In Force Season 1, Tommy found out that he had a long-lost brother, JP, and a nephew who had been separated from his father since he was a child. Tommy later found out that a young CBI recruit named D-Mac was his nephew and JP's son. But right after telling D-Mac that he was his uncle, and when they were on the way to go talk to JP, the CBI soldiers did a drive-by where D-Mac got shot. Then when JP arrived at the hospital, Tommy let JP know that his son had been shot. Before D-Mac got shot and started working for Tommy, him and his friend Marshall kept shooting up the bar that was owned by JP and his father Herman. One day JP came out with a baseball bat to confront D-Mac and Marshall about shooting up his club, but didn't recognize that D-Mac was his son. My big question is, who raised D-Mac? Did he grow up in the streets just hustling to survive from a young age? What happened to D-Mac's mama? Was she in the picture? Because you would have thought that after D-Mac got shot, that his mom would be at the hospital if she was in the picture. Maybe these are questions that will be answered in Force Season 2, and they will go deeper into JP and D-Mac's backstory. When we first met D-Mac, Jannard was telling Diamond about D-Mac and Marshall and said that these boys are some stone-cold killers. Diamond told Jannard not to let them anywhere near him. But looking at the big picture now, we know that D-Mac is not a killer from the conversation he had with Tommy right before getting shot. D-Mac was just wearing that mask as a young kid who grew up in the streets. He had no choice but to act hard. Then after some time had passed, D-Mac and Marshall came up with a plan to make some paper by connecting Jannard with Marshall's cousin Buddy from Gary, Indiana. But before D-Mac was able to get a cut out of it, Marshall cut him out the deal and told D-Mac that it was his deal. And this was 100% true. Marshall did what he was supposed to do. D-Mac really couldn't even be mad at Marshall for cutting him out the deal. Like Marshall told him, it was his cousin, his deal. Unless D-Mac was the plug, they just look at him as another hand sticking out looking for a cut. So instead, they cut him out the deal. Then as soon as Marshall made the introduction between Cousin Buddy and Jannard, Jannard did the same thing to Marshall and cut him out the deal. Again, as he should have. Marshall made the mistake of introducing Jannard and Buddy, and once that introduction was made, they no longer had need for the middleman. D-Mac and Marshall initially had the right idea of being couriers, delivering the product to Gary, but in the game, sometimes you got to be a little bit dishonest. They should have set up the deal by telling Buddy Jannard would only sell through them, and telling Jannard that Buddy would only meet up with them. This way they immediately become more valuable and someone you can't cut off, because that would be the key factor to getting the deal done. I knew all about this move before I even got into the game just by watching the movie Blow. Diego cut out the middleman George as soon as he got the introduction to George's distro, Pee Wee Herman. So when I was in the game, that was the number one rule I followed. Nobody got a meeting with my Connect, and nobody as much as even knew as who my Connect was. That way they couldn't go trying to find him out and about somewhere. Then once Marshall got cut off by Jannard, he decided to reconcile his relationship with D-Mac. This is when D-Mac got the idea to cut Jannard out, since he had the plug on Dahlia, and was able to get a brick of Dahlia from somewhere to give to Cousin Buddy. But Buddy didn't trust Marshall and D-Mac because they came without Jannard, and told them that they either bring him 4 more bricks of Dahlia or sit with their Connect, or he was going to kill them both. And when D-Mac tried talking to Tommy about this, Tommy was furious. Not because the move he made, but because D-Mac is his nephew and he didn't want him out there in the streets. Right after this, D-Mac got shot because Jannard heard he made a move to go to Gary without him. So this is where we are with the whole situation. This time D-Mac and Marshall made the right move, but they should have talked to Tommy about it beforehand and not after the meeting with Cousin Buddy. At the same time, both Gennard, D-Mac, and Marshall are all making a crucial mistake when dealing with Cousin Buddy and letting Buddy pull a power move on them. That is Law 8 from the 48 Laws of Power. Make others come to you. Use bait if necessary. Every meeting with Cousin Buddy so far has been on his own turf in Gary. And that is a very dangerous place and a dangerous game that they're playing. Buddy could kill them in Gary, and they never even make it back to the Chi. As the plug, you call the shots and should always be the one to call the meeting place. When I was in the game, I would never give a customer the ability to choose where I meet them, no matter how much they were buying from me. Matter of fact, the more they were buying from me, the more reason I had to meet somewhere that I felt comfortable. Even when it came to me meeting my plug, I was always looking to get my plug to come to me, and a lot of the time it worked out. Especially my plug coming to me was a blessing, because he would be the one driving with all the weight and not me. On top of never letting a customer choose where to meet me at, I would always show up to the meeting at least 5 minutes late. That way I know my customer is already there, and I'd be able to circle around looking for the cops if I needed to. And if my customer wasn't already there when I arrived, I would just leave. I would never wait, because that could be a trap. Then when they would call me and ask me where I was at, I would give them a different location and make them wait at least 30 more minutes. This is just the type of stuff you got to do when you're in the game to avoid being robbed, killed, or set up by a snitch. And 85% of my weight was going out of the city to the surrounding counties, and I would never even step a foot into those counties. This way, if someone got arrested by the local cops, they're going to work with the state cops, federal, or another county in order to be able to come for me, making things more complicated. Plus, that way, I never stepped on anyone else's toes. And if I was like a ghost. At one point, things got hot for me, so the girl I was with at the time convinced me to stay at her mom's for a couple weeks. While I was there, she was telling me about all the people in her neighborhood I could sell to. I had to explain to her, you know that guy Steve who lives on the corner? He runs this neighborhood. Selling dope to anyone around here would be stepping on his toes. So if I can't sell to Steve, I'm not selling to anyone else around here. And concerning Gary, Indiana, it's not a place to be playing around in either. When I was young, I knew a lot of people from Gary who had moved to my city to escape all the violence in Gary. And I've heard some war stories about Gary, Indiana. Trust me, that town is nothing nice. So just like how Cousin Buddy was ready to kill Gennard when he first showed up if he didn't give him that brick, and the same thing with D-Mac and Marshall, if you're not from Gary, you don't show up unannounced like it's all good. So I would expect Cousin Buddy to show up on the scene causing problems in Season 2. He might even try kidnapping D-Mac and holding him at ransom like Jukebox was trying to do with Tariq on Power. This is another reason why Tommy needs to get JP and D-Mac out of Chicago and move them in with Kate in New York. And if that happens, look for Marshall to end up being a casualty because of all this. And there you have it. Leave your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.